Borky, why don't you set this up?
All right. So you read the quote yesterday from Greg Sankey at SEC meetings. Remember, we've talked a couple of times about this idea that the SEC is going to have their own version of a national championship and the reality of that. I'm not going to read the quote. It's long, but long story short, Greg Sankey didn't exactly say that it wasn't something they're going to consider, but he said it's in a folder somewhere. However, he did mention that when the current college football playoff deal expires just a few years from now, there's nothing. He used the phrase literally nothing after that. And so it got me thinking. Reading his quotes got me thinking about some stuff you've heard from other power players in college sports. The AD at Notre Dame basically said the NCAA can and will do nothing. They can't do anything. They can't enforce their rules. They are useless to us. You've seen people question the future of sports and sustainability and playoff discourse being what it is, and nothing is going to get done. So it got me thinking that Greg Sankey is telling the truth when he says that they're going to consider options when the playoff contract expires here in just a few years. I think he is telling the truth. I think a breakaway in college sports is absolutely imminent. I think it's going to happen, at least in football. Maybe the other sports stick around, like we have precedent for that in smaller sports. But in football, a breakaway, in my opinion, is coming. However, I don't think it's going to be just the SEC. I think the Big Ten will not, quote-unquote, let that happen because they will want to hitch themselves to the wagon that is the SEC. And the SEC looks at the Big Ten, I assume, as a competent financial partner. The Big Ten is the only league in college football that is comparable to the SEC in terms of interest, fan base size, money, stadiums, markets, and competitive programs. They check all of the boxes that the SEC checks, slightly less, but they are absolutely comparable. Unlike the Big 12, unlike the ACC, unlike the Pac-12. So if I'm right, and the Big Ten and the SEC would collab and join forces to create their own college football playoff model, first of all, do you agree with that? And second, what would that look like? And are we headed towards another round of conference realignment to make that happen?
I mean, I think you hit on something on the more likely for football only. Right? I mean, the NCAA is a disaster, but it works for men's and women's basketball. It works for baseball and softball. It works for soccer. And not to say that whatever this SEC, Big Ten, plus a few others entity is couldn't run championship events. I mean, good grief. I could run championship events. And I'm not being flippant when I say that. I've just spent some time working in event production and logistics. It's about attention to detail and having the budget to pull stuff off. And if you've got the budget and you attend to the details and you got good people working with you, you can put on great events. As big or small, flashy or plain as you want. You can do that. You don't have to have the NCAA to run championship events. I mean, it's a logistics thing.
They already don't remember. The college football playoff is not overseen by the NCAA. Completely separate entity.
But they run all the other. That's what I'm saying. They run all the other. The baseball and the softball and the men's and women's basketball and the lacrosse and all of those things. I guess the point that I was just making was it works now, but it could work with somebody else running it as well. So what's the benefit at this point of the NCAA? I mean, do you believe at all in college athletics as it exists? Or is the separation so vast between the top 50 programs in college football and everybody else that it doesn't work?
And remember, that separation financially is only going to get more significant between the Big Ten, SEC, and everybody else.
that separation is already huge within the conferences. What's the separation between Mississippi State and Alabama? I mean, that's huge.
$100 million.
Who's the 50th?
$85 million.
What's the 50th biggest football program? What's the difference in their budget between them and Alabama or Texas?
Or them and Mississippi State?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably quite big. And then, like we said, when this new SEC, we really are hitting on a lot of things. You guys will be excited. I talked about this kind of stuff on the podcast for a change. And
I just want you to talk about it on this show.
I am talking about it. I'm talking about it right now.
I love it.
Right now.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
When this new SEC deal happens, that gap just grows between Mississippi State and whoever is 50, Kansas State or Cincinnati, whoever it is. You know, that gap just grows. So it feels like it's a worst case scenario that we're talking about. We're basically imploding FBS and creating an entirely new system. But there's a reasonable amount of logic that says this is where it's going to head. That the SEC and the Big 12 are going to say, or the Big 10, I'm sorry, will say we need to get about 8 to 10 more teams, and then we're done with the NCAA. We're going to run this the way we want to.
All right, so what's the number, right? The SEC we know is 3 years away from 16 teams. The Big 10 is currently at 14 teams. Is that right? Are they at 12 or 14?
14.
Well, they're 14.
They're at 14, yeah. So that's 30. But you got to get the same number in both. So do you simply add 2 more to the Big 10 and go, okay, you're at 32, or are you more likely to go, you know what, let's do 24 in the SEC, 24 in the Big 10, which, by the way, 24 is kind of an unmanageable number for what we've been talking about with scheduling models, right, where you want to play everybody. It's kind of hard to do that.
Right.
Well, they figured out COVID pretty quick, so they can adjust it again, no problem.
So if you go 24 in both, the SEC, after Texas and Oklahoma, has got to add 8 more, and the Big 10 has got to add 10 more. So that means there are 14 slots. I'm sorry, 18 slots to be filled to take you to 48 teams.
But, I mean, it seems like it's not enough teams. But if the Big 10 got Notre Dame and Southern Cal, who am I missing? I mean, Clemson maybe?
Clemson, Florida State, Miami.
Florida State and Miami. But, I mean, Florida State and Miami aren't college football playoff contenders. Right
yeah,
now.
But those are schools that it's okay. I mean,
North Carolina.
Fine for them to be in. Virginia
It's fine
Tech.
for them to be in. But I'm saying if I could just get Notre Dame and Southern Cal, you might be willing to call it a day there and be like, that's enough. Because we got everybody that's outside of Clemson and I guess Oregon in year 1, Florida State in year 1. We've got everybody that's ever been in the playoff.
You're right. But I don't think you're necessarily trying to make it exclusive. I mean, right, you're trying to pots, right? You need to add so we were talking to Sango, and Hey Dad says, well, if you pick up Southern Cal and Notre Dame and you put them in the Big 10 and you got the 16 teams in the SEC, you're good enough, right? Good enough. Let's do it. Carry on. I'm not sure that's a representative enough sample size. I'm not saying you can't do it. And look, maybe you want to punish the ACC and the Pac-12. You had your little alliance. You derailed the 12-team playoff, so now it's time for the chickens are coming home to roost.
I want to picture Greg Sankey like Willy Wonka. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir. I like that. Yes.
And whether the SEC and the Big Ten really like each other, they are comparable enough that they kind of have to be bedfellows.
Yeah.
Who are we picking up that's not in the South is my question. We already have the South. Who are we picking up? Florida State, Miami, Clemson. They're in the South.
But this is not – hold on. This is not – we're trying to find TV markets. This is what are the schools that can compete? They can afford to play
Although, first off, I'm going to say that I disagree. It should all be all about TV markets. It's all about money. That's all we care about in this scenario. But that's fine.
But hey, Dad, you want to strengthen the overall product while also broadening it, right? Okay, so the state of Florida is a massive TV market. You got to add Florida.
I'm going to take Florida State and Miami. You
got to do Miami also? It's enough of a national brand.
Okay. I feel like Miami is more on the come up than Florida State is right now.
Okay. All right, so here's who I highlighted from the ACC. Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. Do you have to put NC State in there also?
I don't know that you have to put
I think
Virginia
they could
in,
compete.
To be honest.
I think they could.
They could compete. They'd be okay. Virginia.
Okay, I'm going to highlight NC State.
Okay.
All right, so from the current ACC, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's leaving out Duke, leaving out Boston College, leaving out Georgia Tech and Louisville, leaving out Pittsburgh, leaving out Syracuse, and leaving out Wake Forest.
Which is weird because Pittsburgh just won that. Just won the conference.
Just won the conference.
And
look, they played Wake Forest, not there either.
As part of this exercise, nobody that is currently part of the Big Ten or part of the SEC is getting kicked out. So you can say all day long, well, Vanderbilt doesn't belong. Well, sorry, they've been there since the beginning. They're the part of the lucky you-know-what club. To some degree, Ole Miss and State fall into that category. Geographically, they were in the right place. That was the footprint. They're charter members. They're not going anywhere. Say that. I mean, Arkansas got added way on down the line.
I think the school you left out that it makes the most sense from the ACC is Louisville.
Why?
That's a big market. They have historically been competitive. They're in a lull right now. That's probably the best of the ones you left out.
You know, to me, and you can throw Miami right back in my face. But Louisville is so different than all of those other schools, except for Miami, that they are a city school instead of a state school.
That's true.
Clemson is a state. Yeah, Clemson's a state university.
Clemson's not a city
school. But it's named after a city. What do we want?
So is Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn. What are we talking about? I don't understand what
you mean. It's just university versus like a Memphis, a Cincinnati, a Louisville. There's a difference. Clemson is a major state university. Auburn is a major state university.
So Louisville is not a major Kentucky university?
Historically, no. The University of Kentucky, they're not. Hey, Dad, they were the Metro Conference and the Great Midwest Conference and
Florida State.
Yeah.
Florida State was in the Metro Conference.
Florida State's newish, though, still as a university.
Yeah, they were a teacher's college until they were a girls' college for most of their existence.
60s or
the 50s or the 60s or something, yeah.
Well, we don't have to debate the merits of. I'm sure somebody in Louisville would be incredibly angry at me. I just look at that a little bit differently. That doesn't make it right or wrong, and you can tell me I'm crazy. That's fine. Let's just hold on Louisville for now. So we got 7 from the ACC. There were a total of 18 spots to fill. Who in the Big 12 do you want to add?
Nobody.
Oklahoma State?
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
I think Baylor is the best of this group. They with Aranda right now, they certainly could compete, but that's it.
West Virginia does nothing for you?
No.
See, I would argue in favor of Oklahoma State. Good, strong football, good, strong basketball traditionally. Invested hugely in baseball. Plenty of money.
Well, they invested hugely in football.
Well, the thing is, if you're trying to get up to 48, which I think is a good, solid number for what this would be trying to accomplish, you would have to add them. So
you're going to have to take some more Mississippi State, Ole Miss kind of programs that are not the top tier, but you just got to have some more teams.
All right, so let's come back to the Big 12 in a second. We've got 7 from the ACC. And I'm going to take Oklahoma State for right now because that gets you to 8. And you've still got to add 10 more schools to make this work. So let's go to the Pac-12.
Well, hold on.
You
add Notre Dame. Add Notre Dame. So they're in.
Well, of course they're in.
Or did you put them? Well, I mean, we haven't mentioned them.
I'm sorry,
you didn't
I have
put
not
them
mentioned Notre Dame. You're right. They were one line off on my spreadsheet.
Right.
Okay, so now you've got 9 spots to fill.
USC.
Southern Cal.
USC.
Okay.
Oregon.
Washington. Oregon.
Now, hold on just a second before we start doing this willy-nilly with the Pac-12 teams.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard the argument so many people are leaving California to move to Texas that Texas, if they're not careful, is going to end up with the exact same problems that California had because the people that are leaving California think they're going to go to Texas to get it better, but they bring their stupid ways with them and they screw Texas up in the process. I just want to throw that out there before we start adding Oregon and Washington and whoever else from the West Coast.
But we know that Oregon and Washington are invested in care
I don't know that
football.
about Washington. Washington's in Seattle. No, I understand about football. But I'm talking about the people who were willing to throw away a football season just 2 years ago and go, oh, we can't do it. The world's going to come to an end. You want to invite them to this party? You sure?
Well, I mean, we can go back to just getting Notre Dame and USC.
Well, maybe so. I'm just thinking out loud here. Before we kick Oklahoma State and say, I'm sorry, you're not worthy. I'm just saying.
But Washington has been in the playoff. Oregon has been in the playoff. USC is a traditional power, even though they haven't been great recently. You know that their ceiling is super high.
But remember,
they're going to get in.
If you do this, it wouldn't be them making the call. It wouldn't be the commissioner of the Pac-12 making the call on something like that.
It's the schools.
It's these guys.
Yeah.
But so if that's the end of it, right? If you stop with the Pac-12, USC, Washington, and Oregon, by my count, I've still got 5 spots left.
By the way, we have nothing. The Mountain Time Zone is useless to college football at this point.
Yes, it is.
There is nothing happening in the Mountain
I love
Time
Folsom Field.
Well, Utah could compete.
Utah could compete. I'll give you Utah. You can put Utah in. I love Colorado. It's a great spot for college football. I love it when there's snow and the Colorado spelled out and the Buffalo on the field. Love it. But what are we talking about? It's not 1991. Darian Hagan's not walking through that door.
Mm-hmm. Rashawn Salon.
With Utah, you've got 44. So
Cordell
22-team conferences.
They're gone.
Yes.
So how is
Say
it
it
44,
again,
22-team conference?
Adding Utah gets me to 44.
It feels like that's a number. I guess that's work.
And you
It
could
just
cut
feels like
some
from a
of this
scheduling
down.
standpoint that gets to a weird. You're going to 22 and then you're going to
Right.
11 and
Well, you could cut some of this down, obviously, but what I am seeing on this paper right here that I have written down, both conferences, all that, is viability. This is something that would work.
Who did we add from the Pac-12?
I've got USC, Washington, Oregon, Utah.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, like for
5
all
years
that I
ago,
was
we would have
saying-
had Stanford in, but not now.
Yeah, for all that I was saying a second ago, I think maybe the overall or the overarching point I'm making is, hey, you're welcome to come to the party, but bring what I tell you to bring. You know, I don't need a bowl of tofu at the barbecue. If I tell you to bring a side
your
of baked
potato
beans,
salad with the raisins in it.
if I tell you to bring a side of baked beans, the only thing you better add is some bacon. It's kind of the point that I'm making. We're in charge. This is our party. You're welcome to attend, but you're not making the rules, and you're not setting the menu.
Sounds like
I think that this is coming. By the way, you never answered that question. My pie in the sky thing that these people are telling us that this is coming and all of that. Do you think that that's reality?
I don't know. And I know that's not how I'm supposed to answer, right? I'm supposed to have a big old flaming hot take. I just don't know. I do think that there is a division that is inevitable at some point.
I mean,
because the gap is it's going from a gap to a chasm.
this would be one of the biggest changes in sports that any of us, like maybe the biggest change since the merger of the NFL and the AFL.
How'd that work out?
That's what we're talking about here. Worked out really well. So, but that's why it's just difficult to wrap your head around the idea that maybe 48 teams are just going to say we're done with the NCAA. We're going to play by our own rules. I mean, it's just tough to get that into your head and make it work. I get that, Just because you could do it on EA Sports doesn't mean you can do it in real life.
I hear a usually pragmatic guy say things when it comes to the playoff expansion debate that was shut down, even though he stuck his neck out for that. And now this, in 3 years, we have nothing. And nobody at the table, when they talk about the future of the sport and its postseason, are going to agree on anything. And then he's going to look at his conference's financials and the Big Ten's financials, where they are doubling that of third place, and think, why do I need them at my table anymore?
All right, so we got 5 spots to fill. Here's where we are in our quest to get to 48. At least on my chart. Hey, Dad, I did not highlight one that you suggested, but I could be convinced maybe.
Louisville?
No, I didn't highlight Louisville either. I did not highlight Baylor. 14 from the SEC and 14 from the Big Ten. From the ACC, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and then Notre Dame kind of falls into the pseudo-ACC category. From the Big 12, Oklahoma State, of course, in addition to Texas and Oklahoma. From the Pac-12, Oregon, Southern Cal, Utah, and Washington. That's 43 teams right now. So, you got to add 5 more to get to our magic 48 number.
And in bracketology terms, these are the last 5 in.
The last 5.
Like we are,
and I think
we are really picking nits.
I mean, 48 is the number that really works. And if you want to go, if you want to jump it from 48, you've really got to go to 64 or
64.
to 62. Could you go to 60?
There really
60?
aren't.
No, 64 would be the next.
There really
spot.
aren't 60. There really aren't 60 programs that can compete. I mean, there really aren't 48 programs that can compete. To be totally honest.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to 64, then you're taking the existing Power 5 conferences and Notre Dame, and then you're going to...
You might add like Memphis or I don't know. That's
No.
So give me 5 more.
You're taking the existing Power 5 programs and you got to subtract 6.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah.
No,
so if we need 5 more,
4.
if we need 5 more, let's stick to that. Let's stay on target here, guys.
All right, so 5 more. Is there anybody else in the Pac-12? Arizona
let's
State.
Put the 2 that we have. I mean, Arizona won 1 football game last year. I mean, I'm sure they'll get better, but how much better are they going to get?
Cal, UCLA. Cal is a hard no for me.
UCLA is one that I can be convinced of.
Okay.
Good national brand. You mentioned basketball.
But we're doing football only here. This is a football only thing for right now.
Well, but you mentioned basketball for Oklahoma State.
Oh, I know. We were just talking about Oklahoma State as like an overall profile.
Okay.
I was mentioning
UCLA could be in.
Yeah, I was mentioning Oklahoma State basketball and baseball because of kind of the injection of capital they've had into their facilities.
Right, okay.
And kind of like where they are overall.
UCLA.
Okay.
All right. My 5.
Colorado?
UCLA, Louisville, Baylor. I'm putting those guys in. So I need 2 more. Colorado, no. Honestly, like what do we have in the Northeast? Do I go to Boston College?
No.
I mean, what's the difference between Boston College and Arizona? I mean, you disdain for Boston College. Arizona, you're like, maybe. Well, why don't I want to get some eyeballs in the north into New England?
Who watches Boston College football anyway?
Who watches Arizona football?
That's more of a brand than Boston College.
I guess.
What about BYU?
BYU is because
that's a great choice. Actually, they belong. They do.
Yeah, there's a religious undertone to this. You know, Catholics are going to watch Notre Dame. Mormons are going to watch BYU. I can live with BYU.
Okay.
Is Cincinnati a choice?
You know what I was about to say? UCF.
Who? Ooh, I like that. I do like that.
You like UCF or Houston more?
UCF. They are, and they're about
UCF
to upgrade the bounce house too. By the way, the renderings look phenomenal. Yeah. Like they're serious about winning there.
Yeah, Mike Bianchi on line one, finally happy.
That guy.
But I mean, I the more we do this, I said this a second ago, but I see this happening. I see this working, and there's so many ways that this wouldn't. One, somebody on the text line said, is this killing other sports? No, because you already have not football, but precedent where you have teams that compete on various levels. You have Furman football that plays at the FCS level, basketball, FBS level. The entire Southern Conference is that way. You've got South Carolina men's soccer that competes in the Conference USA, if I remember it correctly. So there's precedent for operating on different levels and in different leagues depending on the sport. Do you know that Villanova has a football team? They do. So there's precedent for that already. You can still even have situations where a Southern Miss can get their bye game in Tuscaloosa. Because the Sun Belt, I was telling Richard at the break, the Sun Belt is not going to say, oh, you guys are breaking away. We're not taking your money anymore. They'll still gladly play SEC teams and take their money. So you can still have those. The FCS teams are still going to have that. And then you have this super conference where everybody's relatively equal, where you can set your own rules, have your own transfer portal. NIL is something that you can actually figure out among the big boys with competence, run a tournament that is not just 4 teams, have some parity, and make a ton of money, which is the most important thing. That's more viable and sustainable than what we currently have as a structure in the sport.
It is. But here's the thing. With the new money that's going to be generated of this, and I mean, this is only going to work if there's more new money to kind of spread and level the playing field a little bit. Which I'm not sure that the SEC and the Big Ten, frankly, are that interested in. I don't know that they're really interested in leveling the playing field. I'm going to guess that Greg Sankey and Kevin Warren and the presidents and the ADs kind of like looking out and seeing this vast amount of separation. But I think what we're trying to do is maybe what we think is best for the product of college football. And by the way, all of these other schools continue to play football just because you're not part of this group of 48. That leaves you with what, 96 schools that are still playing football? And guess what? There's a playoff there and a national championship there.
And they would pull some teams up from the FCS level, I assume, and they could.
I don't know that it's necessary to pull teams up from the FCS level.
You don't have to.
Somebody said you can't leave out the trees of Stanford.
5 years ago, that would have been true.
I mean, Patrick a second ago says, so what happens to SMU, Hawaii, et cetera? Well, nothing. They keep playing football. But the separation between SMU and Hawaii and the SEC and the Big Ten and, whomever else is vast.
SMU boosters might be like, hey, we can get back in this. We can bring back the old ways. Bring us in.
And look, the argument that I would make for, you're creating an elite class. No, there's already an elite class. What you're doing is creating a level playing field for 2 different classes, and you create an opportunity to actually win big at a smaller level and actually win big at a lower level. You make the argument that it's actually worse for the bottom teams of this super conference setup than it is for the others.